that we may still have some people coming in, as Wendy has pointed out. Good weather may be having its first impact on Poets Corner. And so typical structure. So welcome to Poets Corner reading series. Also welcome to Fairleigh Dickinson University. I usually point out we've been here 16 years, and this is the largest classroom we have on campus, which I like. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded territory of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples, and we are broadcasting through New Jersey, Hackensack, where we are also on the traditional territories of the Lenni Lenape peoples. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Alice tonight. Alice Major is a poet, writer, and essayist who served as Poet Laureate of Edmonton, Alberta, a city I know and love, and lived in for probably too many years. She has published, you can only say that if you've lived through Edmonton winters. She has published 12 collections of poetry and a collection of essays on poetry and science. Her work has received multiple awards, most recently an honorary doctorate from the University of Alberta. 2019? 2019. In 2017, she was awarded the Lieutenant Governor of Alberta Distinguished Artist Award. In 2016, the Robert Croce Award for Poetry for Standard Candles, University of Alberta Press. In 2011, the Stephen G. Stephansson Award for Memory's Daughter, and in 2009, the Pat Lowther Award for the Office Tower Tale. Her most recent book is Knife on Snow, and I always like to point out that she has 6 books with the University of Alberta Press, which only chooses the best books. The floor is yours, Alice.
I can read, yes, I'm good. Thank you all so much for being here. Is all the tech lined up?
You're all good.
All good, okay. I want to start with a few thank yous to James and Kim and Emily and Wendy and all the people that are putting this series together. Believe me, I know how much goes into keeping a reading series going. And it's much appreciated. It's also nice to be here for the first time in Vancouver for many years. The second thank you is my own personal land acknowledgement. I do live in Edmonton, the land that is now known goes by the name Treaty 6 territory. And this new book that I'm going to read from, like all my others, is shaped by finding myself in that landscape. So I'm deeply grateful to have found my way there. And to all of those many voices who have created poems and stories and prayers and songs for thousands and thousands of years. They're voices that we all need to listen to, and the voices that are still here with us. And third, I want to thank Turnstone Press, because everybody needs a change now and again, but they were glad to take on this new book and have been a lovely press to work with. So I want to read you, I'll start by reading some pieces from one of the 2 long poems that are in the book. It's called A Fate for Fire, and it seems all too appropriate in this particular week of forest fires raging once again across the landscape. We've become so familiar with wildfire in the boreal forest. We forget how vital a biome that forest is. And it hops from Canada, it's truly circumpolar. It hops from Canada across to Scandinavia, Siberia, and around the globe, again towards Alaska. And there are fires occurring throughout that biome. Now, humans have been burning things throughout our history. There's evidence for intentional use of fire for almost 1 million years. Our hominin ancestors have been burning things. But now, of course, that activity has become a major concern for the atmosphere. So in this long poem, I wanted to give a sense of that deep, deep history and also of the boreal's global reach. So one of the threads I wove into this is Scandinavian mythology and the Anglo-Saxon epic of Beowulf, which gave me a form, alliterative verse that I loved when I read Beowulf way back when, for its, there's a drive and a beat to that verse form. So I'm going to start with an epigraph from Beowulf to give you a feel for the sound of it. And then I'm going to read a section dealing with the fire in Fort McMurray 7 years ago. We haven't had a summer since that did not have fires. Once more a monster moved through the night. A raging flame dragon ruled in darkness, fire grim guardian of a great treasure mound. Another summer of thirst season, Canada's west wilting, threatened by the fire beast rampant, roused from sleep after dry winter. Droughts, parched tongues sucking at soil, spring too soon, too sudden hot, streams sinking, roots wretched, rusted grass and brittle shrubs ready to burn. Such was the scene stretching beneath the helitack crew called to a blaze near Fort McMurray, city gripped in the fist of forest. Far north Alberta, oil-built town on the Athabasca. In former times, the first peoples knew bitumen seeped from the black banks, patched travel boats with its dark tar. Now hydraulic shovels and heavy haulers rip overburden from buried oil sands. Massive projects ring McMurray, scrape the boreal down to its bones, jack pine and steep bank, the giant pits of Muskeg River, Mildred Lake, Horizon Mine. Heavy equipment patrols pit floors where old petroleum binds silica sand, a sticky sea where forest crowds, construction camps, and paychecks float on pipelines fate. The copter pilot keeps panic back as smoke columns swirl skyward, shouts through the roar of rotor blades, whoa, this is bad. No one tree wonder to curb with their bucket. The canvas cistern slung below the chopper's stomach is less than a mouthful of meager spit at that fiery face. Fury has birthed itself, beast out of bondage, growing greedy. Winds gust, drive destruction to the city's door. Only 9 miles off, in the angle of streams, the water web that weaves Muskeg, homes cluster in a clutch of trees near a thin thread, a 300-mile strand of asphalt, single escape route south to safety. Days of siege then. The beast stretches paws into the city again and again. Embers swirl across Athabasca, astonishingly. The mile-wide river cannot repulse fire's weather wind. Its wings spread like a black bat's beast with a brain circling the city, seeking prey. A morning's respite, momentary. A crust of cold air contains the blaze. blue sky, false calm. Birds know better, fly in a frenzy, fierce shrieks. Then citizens see the smoke wall shift, lean in on the town, a lowering tower, orange streaked ribcage. Orders at last, evacuate everyone. 90,000 now in flight. Through the choked throat and thick smoke of that one road out, walls of fire on either hand, hell mile, hellscape, vehicles draining through a downpour of flame, raining embers, the roaring lungs of flames 50 feet high, fire whirls of dust, scenes snatched from thick smoke beyond car windows, kids on horseback running their mounts to uncertain refuge past flame walls, flash of police lights. Cars stop to scoop up dogs, load them aboard. Power lines erupt in sparks. Meanwhile, the monster makes its weather. Perilous updrafts lift pyrocumulus, that cloud fist, inferno's club into the air. Arrow flickers of dry lightning, but no downpour follows, no rain relief. Only the roil of Thor's thunder thrashing the landscape with a hazardous hail. Hot ember seeds that sprout new shoots. Fire spawn spreads ever further into green forests. And the long road log jammed with crawling trucks, creeping cars. Drivers gaze at dropping gauges, emptying tanks. How ironic, stranded for fuel in forest terrain that floats on petroleum. This fragile thread, the one roped out, the one forced engine of economy, all encircled by boreal forest designed to burn. Plants build their green bodies with carbon, and the planet hoards those bodies after death. In the clasp of oceans, in stone sarcophagi layered over drained ancient seas, in stuck peat below permafrost. So the dragon holds its treasure to its chest. So this isn't the cheeriest book I've ever written. And this time I want to, the second bit I'd like to read from it is from the title poem, which is called Knife on Snow. And I recorded that, the very first part of this poem, as my 1-minute poem offering. So I won't repeat that, but the story began with a real knife on real snow in my backyard, lying flat, 2 feet of snow, no tracks, no way to tell how it got there. Tall hedges, I have very tall hedges all around my yard. Must have taken one hell of a throw. And it felt weirdly personal, like a message or a threat. And it sent me to thinking about causes. The utter continuity of time. We sometimes think of the colonialism of Western Canada as being a relatively recent overlay, a couple of centuries over a long history before that. But coincidentally, when I was writing about this, I was also reading a history of the Roman Empire by Ammianus Marcellinus. who's a Roman historian and soldier, who's writing just a couple of decades before the Gothic invasion of Rome and the end of the Roman Empire in the West. But that was the beginning of a period of massive shift and change, different peoples flowing back and forth across Asia Minor, Europe. And one of the things that came to me as I was reading this is that it's not over. This is the history that in turn brought my people to this continent, to the far northwest. And I think how my being here is just as arbitrary as that night. It is something that has a whole bunch of causes behind it. It's another ripple in time. So I want to read you one section from close to the beginning of the poem, and then the two final ones, because knives aren't the only thing that fall from the sky. I need to know its providence. What mysterious trajectory aims this silver point at me? The blade etched with a brand, Weimar steel, seared upon its surface gleam, a name dropped out of nowhere, echoing a fragile republic spun out of clouds, collapse, aspiration, a temporary eye spot in the circling weather of war. And further echoes from the history of weaponry and iron, the damned tributaries of the Rhine, the roars reverberating thunder, beating artillery into being, industrialists who steal the ear of emperors and build an empire of steel. And the currents circling even deeper through climate systems of conflict, the infrasonic rumble of imperium, Kaisers who mass troops on frontiers and take their title from the Caesars. Section 8. Centuries ago, a star seared across this whole territory, iron lump of asteroid, screaming brilliance, roaring to rest near the Battle River. Child who fell from the sky, the people named it. Those who dwelled here long before the fences, who watched the wild sky streak and found its landed hammer. Meteorite molded by the flowing heat of passage, metal melted into smooth pits, ripples. The warm liver brown of ore frosted with a faint net of silver. We ponder what it means, this object, in which some see a bison head, others the contours of a human face, or a landscape of cliffs rising from the roll of prairie. And I think of convolutions in a human cortex. We are all historians, recording past to foretell inscrutable future. Many said that its arrival meant the land and buffalo belonged to everyone, should not be battled over. Some maintained Creator had sent it as protection. Should it be taken, sickness and famine would follow. As they did, in the plundering centuries after settlers poured onto these plains and stole Manitou Asini away. Now the spirit wrought waits in a round room, ringed by braids of sweetgrass, fragments of offering. It is iron forged before iron was a weapon. 9. But the hallowed artifact I hold is human. This blade, locked into white thermoset plastic, this blade with its German name that might be made in China, the whole world is involved in this, our terrible, obstreperous time. I have been sheltered behind my tall, tough hedges, but now feel stripped, unprotected, naked to the sky. This toss of aggression completes some series of purposeful acts whose history I cannot know in full. Anxious colonist, I lift my hands, seeking some other augury, a message from the realms beyond anger, some small omen of hope. Okay, so I know this doesn't seem too cheery. As I say, and at some point I did actually think of calling the book All the Apocalypses. But this is because this is a worrying time. We're trying to find our way through it. But it's not the apocalypse. This is not an end time. We don't get that luxury. We have to go through. There's never a complete break. So I want to conclude by reading 2 poems from another part of the book. It's a sonnet sequence called The Last of the Ediacarans. Now, Ediacaran geology is really fascinating. I won't tell you all about it right now. You'll have to buy it and read the notes. But it is a record of a time in Earth's history where all life forms seemed to stop existing. But the sequence is really about me feeling worried that the lid is coming down on everything, and then knowing it's not. There's immense adaptability and resilience, not just in humans, but in the global systems, the biomes, the other creatures of this planet. And I truly do hope and believe that they will pull us through. So we have Ideonella sakaiensis. The things that turn up in garbage dumps. In a waste of plastic waste, a lipid capsule evolves, an Aravist bacterium inventing itself, squeezing out an enzyme that can snip a wrapped up molecule of PET to unlock nourishment from plastic's toxic tangled twine of carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen. Those elements, harmless in themselves, that we combine into plastic's static, structured clumps that temporarily seem eternal. Until Ideonella and its microbe kind weave dissolution's necessary mesh and save our living world from permanence. And finally, time flows through history. The future comes at me in flakes and raindrops. A sudden midnight rain releasing drought. The relief of liquid that takes its shape from where it finds itself. Now, this moment that suspends its translucent page between past and future, like a flickering screen on which the transient makes patterns that constantly reshape themselves. Here is where I find myself for now. Beyond the window pane, the garden's cracked, compacted skin expands and heals, while liquid time pours on and does not end. Thank you all.